My friends, good day and welcome to the Southern Hemisphere. A new scandal in the United States with the Trump administration, which is using the country the same way Ben Ali's administration did in Tunisia. Ben Ali in Tunisia, he had to be kicked out by his people. Well, he, his wife, his in-laws, and his entourage were using all the country's institutions to enrich themselves personally and control part of the economy into their own pockets and private accounts, spending as they wished. Well, the elites have been doing this for a very long time. It's been generations, nothing new. But he had gone too far. The one who is still abusing this privilege is the Trump clan. So let me tell you, we have these stories about tariffs, if you remember. Tariffs are import taxes. I'm going to tax steel. I'm going to tax copper. Oh no, I'm not going to do it. Oh, it'll be 35%. No, actually, it'll be 15%. He tweeted about that often. If you look back then, more and more people noticed that when he tweeted about something, well, in the minutes before, there were heavy trading in the market and the trades always went in the right direction. So there were people who were predicting Trump's next move. And that's why, by the way, very regularly you see him say, we won the war in Iran. Oh no, actually, we're going to attack Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is open. No, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. I'll just close it myself. In reality, the goal is just to create volatility in the markets, and constantly before those decisions, there's heavy trading. So the people getting rich off this are committing insider trading. We have his son, Baron Trump, who is reportedly worth 140 million today. You should also know that the Trump clan issued, when he came to power, they issued shitcoins. That means they issued crypto that was worthless. And then in the end, he sold it, took the money, and it collapsed. So he's really someone who's using every trick to make money for himself. Even presidential pardons, it seems, he has a market for that. They're monetized, they're sold. So, as I was saying, what happened with these rates is that he would come with his chart and say, tariffs, tariffs, they're scamming us, and so on. He doesn't realize that the biggest scammer is still the United States, because they print fresh dollars and then use them to buy whatever they want. They can buy agricultural products with dollars printed the day before. They can buy whatever they want, real estate, entire roads, all of that. But the rest of humanity doesn't have that advantage. People, if they want to buy something from the United States, they need to find dollars. They can't print them. So in a way, fundamentally, the world economy since 1945 has been based on a big scam that favors the United States. So the fact is, when it comes to talking about tariffs and all that, they're not really in a good position to do so. In any case, what he did was he started to impose, and then roll back these tariffs. The economic operators who were importing consumer goods into the United States, what did they do? Automatically, they passed these taxes on to consumers through higher prices. So the consumer overnight saw an increase in the price of everything, literally. So inflation. So what Trump said was, don't worry, we're going to send you a check. We're going to send every American household a check. There you go, you'll cash it. We're going to compensate you. And it became a regular morning routine for the MAGA supporters to run to the mailbox waiting for Trump's letter. A letter that, of course, never came, just like so many other promises. Remember, during his campaign, candidate Trump was making promises left and right. I remember, for example, he said firefighters would never have to pay taxes. I'll eliminate income taxes. In fact, he was just reading from a teleprompter. He said everything people needed to hear to get elected. Once he got into power, it was over. He did a complete 180. So as I was saying, now there's another scam. It's that when he kept imposing tariffs non-stop, well, he knew they had a legal problem. His tariffs were on shaky legal ground. Why? Because quite simply, the United States is not an absolute monarchy. With Trump at its head, and even wearing the crown, no, there are limits to what the presidency can decide. There are limits to the powers Congress gives him and all that. In any case, roughly speaking, he abused his power by imposing his tariffs. What happened? Well, even knowing that they are fragile, he continued to impose them, and at the same time, 166 billion were collected. At the same time, we have a certain Howard Lutnick, who is the Minister of Economy, if you will, the Minister of Commerce, who is the Secretary of Commerce. Well, he has two children. He has two children? Well, he runs a company that started approaching business operators who paid tariffs. So he told them this. How much did you pay? 10 million. Okay. Here's the plan. We'll offer you 1 million and write a check now. You take 1 million, and on the other hand, if ever there's a refund one day, if ever these tariffs are cancelled, we don't know. It could happen. It might not happen. But if it happens and these tariffs are cancelled, we take everything. So we're buying the 10 million from you for 1 million. So they started going here and there and buying, signing checks and buying. So the business operators anyway, they get the money back from the consumer. They've already gotten it back because they've passed it on. Someone comes and gives them 20 cents per dollar or 10 cents per dollar that they paid. I'll say, why not, right? Okay. They accepted the checks. So the company belonging to the Secretary of Commerce's children ended up with a lot of papers that would become valuable if tariffs ever collapsed. Well, that's what happens. The Supreme Court of the United States rules that the tariffs are illegal. It says that these tariffs are not legal at all. That means Trump overstepped his authority. He did whatever he wanted by imposing these tariffs. So that means his reputation never really existed. It should never have been considered. So what's the result? The result is this. We're going to do two things. First, we're going to refund everyone. Everyone who paid import taxes, we're going to refund them. And on top of that, we're even going to add interest. Of course, because we wrongfully took their money, we're going to give it back to them with interest. So who's going to make money now? Well, the Secretary of Commerce and his proteges. So you have associates barely out of their teens who end up, making money out of thin air. So what happens is simply that they themselves probably borrowed money from the banks. So it was money they didn't even have. They know insider timing, as always. They know that these tariffs are being unfairly imposed and that they're going to collapse. They approach the White House. They know what's going on. All of that. This is pure insider trading. And then they go and buy up refund claims. So they're betting that one day there will be a reimbursement. And as luck would have it, a few months later, there you go. So here, we're seeing once again nothing new. It was done by Ben Ali, it's done by Trump, but it's been done by many for generations. Except now it's starting to show. Why? I was reading a book by Vladimir Lenin the other day, and he was explaining exactly the phases that capitalism goes through. He was talking, for example, about the phase of imperialism. We've all studied in history classes about empires, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the so-and-so empire. All these countries had colonial possessions, dominions, and so on, and they had an empire. All right, that's great. The empires collapsed. That means that today the imperial footprint of capitalism is weaker than it was a century ago, for example. But it's not over. That's not all. There is, for example, I don't know, if you look at Iraq, even now, it's under American imperial domination. Iraq, when it sells its oil, the payment goes to the Fed in New York. Then Iraq makes a list of what products it wants, what it wants to buy, its cash needs, and then the Fed sends it a plane full of cash, full of dollars, you see. So there are still remnants, leftovers of imperialism, but countries today around the world are defending themselves, of course. They push back, these imperialist attacks. So what's happening? The next phase described extremely clearly in this book is the phase. It's the phase of, what do you call it? Wait, I was reading it in English. It's parasitism. That's it. It's the phase of parasitism. It's also called parasitism in English. So parasitism is this phase that we are living in today. It means that the parasite decides to kill the host. Today, we are entering an extractive logic. It's no longer, take this field and I'll take 20% of it. No, it's not like that anymore now. Under feudalism, it was 20% feudalism. If you were at that time under feudalism, if you worked in this field, it wasn't your land. It belonged to a feudal lord. And then what happens is that you work on this field. Here we have sugar cane. It's used to make sugar and rum and all that. Well, you gave 20% to the feudal lord and then 10% to the church. 70% was yours. You see, in the end, feudalism wasn't so bad compared to today. Today, you don't keep 70% and the VAT was zero. There was no tax on the cart just for using it. You see? So, as I was saying, afterwards we moved towards systems with more and more extraction. Today, in a normal capitalist system on a field like this, you keep 20% and then they take the remaining 80% from you. They take it through several successive layers. There will be a land tax, an income tax, a fuel tax, a tax on the machine you use, VAT, all that stuff. If you buy a house, there will be a tax, notary fees, stamp duties, all sorts of fees, even inheritance fees when you die, right? And you realize that 80% really is taken by the state. And with parasitism, that's exactly the remaining 20%. The parasite decides to take whatever's left. I was nice before, but now I want it all for myself. Nothing for the others. I take 100%, and after that you can die if you want. It doesn't matter. Why? Because why did the feudal lord leave 70% to the serfs? Why did he leave them 70%? Well, because he wanted to be able to enjoy a fifth of their harvest for his whole life. And when he dies, his children inherit this estate, and then, well, they continue like that too. So the feudal lord in the end had a better sense of continuity. Today, we don't have that at all anymore. That's over. Now we're in pure and simple parasitism. I collect everything, I pre-sell 100%, and well, that's it. Tomorrow doesn't exist. What you don't take today, you won't take tomorrow. That's it. Greed has become a cult, a religion. That's it. Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching this video up to this point. It's true that now, with the way Trump has changed, it practically cancels out years of what we thought of him, of what we hoped for. We were all happy for the United States when they elected Trump. We were telling ourselves selfishly that we wouldn't have a war, that we would be safe. But at the same time, they would be able to focus on their own country, rebuild it, rebuild their infrastructure, all of that. In the end, everything fell apart. Anyway, thank you for watching this video up to this point, and I'll see you in the next one. See you very soon.